in a world where you can be anything, be kind.
This is Fiona Fung. She grew to a senior director by rising through the ranks of Microsoft and Meta, and today she supports the Claude Code team at Anthropic. And I asked her for everything she learned along the way. What are the things that stood out to you that's different between Microsoft and Facebook?
Definitely speed came to mind. Oh my gosh, a sprint lasts a week? Like usually a sprint for me was like 4 weeks.
Was there ever a time where you received feedback and it really changed your career?
Looking back, that's probably one thing I wish I'd done better at.
Here's the full episode. Let's say there's some project, it's going to be really impactful, but team health is going to take a hit or vice versa. How do you make those calls?
Oh, that's a really good one. We had quite a few of these in the Facebook marketplace days. I would say recognizing when a moment is really such that it's almost existential. So Facebook marketplace, I would definitely remember we had a couple of lockdowns or war rooms where it really became, wow, we really needed to focus, like make sure. And actually, that's one thing I like about lockdowns or war rooms. It allows team to focus on what it is that we were really setting out to do and making sure we're focused on doing that really well. But it does come at a cost to team morale. So my advice is really have those deliberate trade-off discussions with the team and leadership. Like I think looking back, that's probably one thing I wish I'd done better at, that in the early marketplace days in some of those war rooms. I wish we were also just even more up. Like we took a very aggressive goal for I forgot if we called it lockdown or war room because we changed the team names after a while, but we took a very aggressive growth goal. So we weren't going to exit until we hit a certain growth number. And looking back, I think that then that could have been and that war room actually went on for like a really long time. If I had the time machine to do it all over, I probably would have taken a look at that and be much more realistic of how long that was going to take, discuss the morale and team health of the team, and then just be very upfront with the team of, hey, we're going to go on this journey together, but this is how long we think it's going to take.
I mean, when I think of war room, I think of everyone's in a big room and it's for maybe a week for a launch or something like that.
Yeah.
How long was that war room?
Oh my gosh. It felt like at least 2 months. And that was what I mean. We took a growth goal, but I think at the time we were like, well, maybe it's a couple of, fixes that we had to do. There were so many lessons learned. I still remember in that war room, we launched 75 experiments at one time too, when we were trying to, and we were in a literal, there was a room in Menlo Park and a room in Seattle. But I think that one, no one knew. We didn't realize it was going to, take us that long. So that was definitely a lesson learned.
At some point in your career in Microsoft, you became a manager of managers. I'm curious, what is the big pitfall that maybe you experienced, or maybe growing pain when you went from a frontline manager to someone who's managing others?
It kind of goes back to that partnership. Actually, I will share my story. The first time I supported managers or became manager of managers, I guess, was with two different managers. One was manager for TypeScript team. And they are brilliant engineers, still probably one of the best compiler engineers I've ever worked with. And so I remember right in the beginning, I'm like, hey, it's like we were always collaborating as a partnership. What are the things you're really strong at? What are the things I'm good at? And how do we divide and conquer? So I would say that's maybe one thing that's unique of when you start supporting managers and managers, they are also going to have additional skill sets. That's not just IC skill sets, also manager skill sets. So it's even more opportunity to figure out how you both can complement each other and help each other where it's most needed. So that was one really good, just new approach that it was new compared to supporting all ICs. I would say the other one that becomes even more important is building that trust but verify muscle, because there's a lot of trust. As managers, we have a lot of responsibilities leading teams, and but making sure that because I think sometimes you might also hear advice of delegate so it could scale up. If you delegate too much but don't do the trust and verify, you lose touch with the project a little bit too much. So finding that right balance and some of that comes from experience, but also making sure encourage that really transparent conversation with folks you support. To all managers, one thing I ask for is Please, like let's have fast feedback with each other, but also let's be always super transparent about what's going out well and what's not going well. Like, that meme of the dog holding the coffee cup in a room of fire, this is fine.
Yeah.
That's my nightmare of if something's like really that. I remember once I was supporting someone. I'm like, hey, how are things going? And they're like, oh, it's fine. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing fine. I'm impressed that you're doing fine. So, but it starts with just, because if we can actually discuss, things that are like, hot or really need help, that's how we can actually solve it for a team versus this is fine dog meme.
You mentioned to be a good manager, you should enjoy growing others or mentoring others. And I'm curious, now that you've done it for so long, do you have any tips on how to mentor others?
I would start it with just a really explicit conversation with your mentee of what they're looking for in the relationship. Like, so for example, after 3 months of mentoring, what does success look like to them? Or after 6 months, what does it look like? Just so that then it's good, effective use of time for you both. I would also say another tip is there's a difference between mentoring and coaching. And sometimes making sure you have that explicit conversation to see what the other person's looking for. So in mentoring, for sure, you're like listening and trying to dispel helpful advice. In coaching, you're actually acting as a mirror for the other person to help them discover the answers within themselves. So thinking about those two different modes as well could help.
I see. Yeah, that's one thing I was curious is how much of it do you feel like should be driven by the mentee versus the mentor?
I honestly, the most effective mentoring relationships, it comes from that goal being set by the mentee. And for sure, the mentor can help with like life experiences or even advice of different resources. But for all the folks out there looking for mentoring relationship, I would say set really explicit goals for what it is that you're looking to receive out of the mentoring relationship.
If you were to give advice to ICs on like what's the best thing you can do in one-on-ones, what would that advice be?
I would say save status reporting and all that for some asynchronous form. If here in Anthropic is Slack, and so it could be a Slack message, or I like to create a one-on-one doc that is a living doc between both of us so that any async update we can just put in there. I would say save the actual one-on-one time for any conversations you want to have. Whether it's you're curious about learning about something new, or you think, hey, it's a good opportunity for me to dig a little bit deeper into the work that I'm doing with my manager because there might be some interesting product conversations. Whatever it is, I would save the one-on-one time for those live conversations. And anything that's status reporting, you can feel free to use the asynchronous forms of communication.
Yeah, I think I hear that a lot, but I still think a lot of people do status reports anyways in one-on-ones. So going into working at Facebook at the time, what's the story behind you leaving Microsoft and joining Facebook?
So definitely, I've had a lot of friends that was really, really enjoying Facebook, and they're great engineers, but there was always something I really wanted to finish at Microsoft. So, like whether it was Visual Studio Editor or debugger. The last project I was working on was JavaScript and TypeScript. So I really cared about, being there with the team to get TypeScript 1.0 out the door. But then I got a ping from Facebook in late 2014 from actually who ended up, being my first manager at Facebook. We worked together on Visual Studio. And he's like, hey, I'm noticing people buying and selling products on Facebook groups, and we're thinking of building a product around it. And we're going, get out of here. I'm in one of those groups. It was an amazing experience. The first time I made meaningful new connections, because in those days, Facebook for me was more about reconnecting with high school friends or coworkers. I never created any new connections. But I told him, but I really wanted to, be with a team to help, finish TypeScript 1.0. But that was that was one big draw to Facebook. It was just this dream of enabling something totally different from DevTools, but the just dream of enabling commerce on Facebook. Just because I really, there were three things I really believed in, and that kind of starting with C2C commerce. Because I'm very mission driven. So in those days, I was passionate about, wow, if we can enable the style of commerce. Number one, we're very fortunate in tech. We can afford most things new and probably deliver it in 6 hours. 24 hours is not even fast enough. Most of the world isn't like that. And a difference of $5 or $10 can be a difference of, can I afford it or can I not? most folks can't afford things new, or the folks may not be able to afford things new, and buying them used would be a way to be able to afford. That was one. The second was I'm environmentalist at heart. I feel like there's all these goods in the world. It'd be great if I can help work on a platform that enables those goods to get their second, third, or fourth life. And the last one's just supporting small businesses. I really love local small businesses. I feel like they're the lifeblood of any community. So having a platform that enables someone to kickstart a business without first time to get a brick and mortar store, I was really passionate about. So that was all the mission. And so that was one big draw to join, then Facebook in 2015. The other was I was by this point at Microsoft 11 and a half years. And I felt, I've become, reasonably proficient and being a Microsoft engineer in the Microsoft stack. But I realized if you take me outside of that bubble, there were so many things I didn't know. And so part of it too was also wanting to just make sure how I can learn to be an effective engineer when I'm, not within the safe cocoon of the Microsoft ecosystem.
After you got to Facebook and experienced the culture for a bit, curious, what are the things that stood out to you or you saw that's different between Microsoft and Facebook?
There were things that were definitely similar, like work with really great people really passionate about what they're doing. Definitely speed came to mind. So Facebook Marketplace just operated. We were doing weekly updates at the time. With the first version, it was actually on www.facebook.com. So I remember there were weekly updates. I remember going, oh my gosh, a sprint lasts a week? Like usually a sprint for me was like 4 weeks on Visual Studio. And back then I thought that was already a short time compared to, where it started. So definitely speed. Facebook also felt much smaller to me back then, especially coming from Microsoft. So there used to be this poster on the wall that says nothing at Facebook is somebody else's problem. And I really love that culture. It was no matter your role, if there was, a problem, everybody leaned in to help. And so that was something I really, really loved and appreciated.
When you eventually left Meta, I saw that there were, you write this badge post and hundreds of people are kind of saying the reason why they enjoyed working with you. And I noticed several patterns of things that you had done where, many, many dozens of people are saying, oh, I really like that particular part of working with you. So I'd love to go on each of these and kind of ask you your thoughts on them. So the first one is on dog fooding. A lot of people are saying they really appreciated you being a great partner and reporting problems in the product and using the products. So I'm curious, why do you do dog fooding as much as you do? And why is it important?
Oh, it's one of my favorite topics. So as I mentioned, my first job out of college was using Visual Studio to build Visual Studio. So, and I'm really grateful that I got to experience that. And I think that's where I've learned, oh, wow, yeah, I'm going to use a product every day that I'm building. So that's where that initially came from. And I feel it really gave not only empathy for what our users are going through, but it really gives you a good pulse of the product. Plus, it was easy on VS because you're using VS to build VS. But then I guess I carried that over to Facebook Marketplace. I remembered our first test launch was in the Seattle area and also Hawaii. And I remembered I would have a pile of things that usually we would have, donated. And my husband was getting so annoyed, like, why do we sell this pile of stuff? I'm like, no, I need good inventory for me to sell on Facebook Marketplace. And that was where actually it was super rewarding too, not only in terms of using the product and gaining insights, also just inspiration from, meeting users of Facebook Marketplace and seeing that what you do makes a difference. So I think that just kind of carried throughout. So then, when I was on RL, it was a lot of dog fooding of our VR Quest devices. Or I remember when we were first starting up Ray-Ban Stories, which now became Ray-Ban Meta. It was actually during COVID. So then it was a lot of dog fooding, devices from home. But yeah, I think definitely as a manager, you don't get to code, every day or nearly as often as one would like. But dog fooding the product, that's what enables you to experience what it is that your team is working on. And I like to think of it as my maker time. So for example, in my last role working on VR product with Horizon OS, anytime I was able to help us debug some hard to repo issue, that was my maker time. And I felt it was my little way to contribute to the quality of the product. Plus, I don't know why, the way my house is built, I was always able to repro certain floor height bugs. And I was really happy at being able to, get those logs.
I noticed something different too when a manager or a leader, dog foods kind of adds some urgency to the bugs as well. So there might be something that everyone kind of knows about, but kind of gets lost. But then, when you or 𝗲𝗺𝗍 or someone says, hey, this thing's broken, I can't use this. It's a 𝗧𝗶 basically, people are fixing it. So it feels like engineering leaders can kind of like focus people on what matters.
I would say that's also the thing I get the most feedback on anytime I join a new team, even like including Instagram. Like I would just get outreach from Eng to go, oh, it's awesome that you're using our product and you care about what we do. So I also think as leaders, it's a great way to build, relationship and rapport with your overall team.
Do you have any tips on how to dog food, given you're so prolific?
By the way, I love that on Facebook, we still have this 𝗥𝗆 product feedback group. So I'm still posting on that. So thanks in advance, Meta, for responding to my feedback post. I would say find a way to integrate into your life that, brings you joy. Now here I'm super excited because I'm using Claude Code to build Claude Code. First time I've been able to ship production software in a really long time. And I forget how much fun it is to work on code and ship it and be able to see, customer feedback. So here it's kind of easy again because, it's just part of my day job. But I would say, for example, when it was working on VR, thinking about what is it that I really enjoy in life and finding a way to incorporate that in VR. So for example, what I love to use the VR headsets was one was working out. So supernatural. I love that experience. But the other one was opposite end of the spectrum, super couch potato. I love to watch movies and knit while so I would like to knit and watch movies while I'm wearing the VR headset. And those are just things that I enjoy and bring me joy. So it makes dog fooding even more enjoyable and less of a chore. Or it shouldn't be a chore. I think when it becomes a chore, that's when you're like, oh, this is, you always want to try to keep it fun and engaging. But I would say to leaders too, another effective way to dog food is do product sessions with your team. So on my last team in VR, we would do every Friday, me, my PM partner, Carmen, and my design partner, Andres, we would hold these almost like leadership dog fooding sessions of any feature that we think is about ready to ship. We put it on the headset and then give really fast feedback. So incorporating dog fooding that way also allows you to give really quick feedback to your team as well.
Another thing that I saw dozens of people saying is there were a lot of PMs that were saying, I really enjoyed working with you, or directors of PM or various other PMs. And so I'm curious, what's your tip on, as an Eng leader, how to work well with product management?
Ooh, I would say, oh my gosh, I was really fortunate at Meta to work with so many amazing PMs. Really starting initially to go, hey, overall as our group, right? Like as a leadership group, what are we really setting out to do? And where do we each bring the strengths? Because there's always going to be more work than people. And so with product, with my PM partners being upfront going, okay, I got this and you got that, that whole divide and conquer was great. I think all the PMs I work with also appreciated that I did use the product a lot. So a lot of our one-on-ones would also be just riffing on product discussions. And so I think that also really resonated with my PM partners.
I see. So another value of dog fooding.
That's right.
I see. And then I also saw just generally a lot of people calling out, I've seen a lot of badge posts at this point, but an unusual amount of people calling out kindness and in the culture of the orgs that you build. And I also saw that you wrote about kindness as well. I'm curious, your thoughts on kindness in engineering orgs and the value of it.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I think my last bullet in my badge post was, in a world where you can be anything, be kind.
Right.
It probably comes from, I remember during COVID, during that time I was working on AR and VR operating systems. We were trying to ship Quest 2 during COVID. We were incubating Ray-Ban stories and getting ready to ship that too. It was just everybody, especially when you work up with devices and you don't have an office or a lab that you can get to as easily, or you can't have firmware engineers next to software engineers, next to electrical engineers to debug. Everybody really did so much to make those products happen. But with COVID, everybody was also going through a lot at home. So I think that was when I really, and I remember personally for me, where it really struck home was for me, one-on-ones are really important. I always want to try to make them. And my grandmother was living in Canada in an assisted living facility. And because of COVID, I couldn't travel to go visit her. And they actually, no one could, go into the nursing facilities during that time. And so the only way to have time with loved ones in that nursing home was FaceTime. But they were also super strapped on, nurses and helpers. And so there are very few slots that you could get a FaceTime slot where, someone can go in with an iPad, and you never knew when it would happen. And I remembered my aunt messaged me an hour before to go, okay, we got a FaceTime slot with grandma. But it was going to be with one of the one-on-ones I was supporting. And I felt really bad to say, hey, I'm so sorry, last minute. I knew we were going to discuss all these important things too, because we were both looking forward to it. But I said, my grandma, I get this FaceTime slot with her. Is it okay for us to, cancel? I remember him saying, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And I think for him, he probably didn't even think of that as an act of kindness. Like for him, but for me, it had such amazing impact, like more than probably he would have known, because I was really struggling with, do I chat with grandma, or because I never want to cancel a one-on-one. So that was kind of when it started. And so it comes from, everybody's probably going through a lot in their lives. We never know what somebody is going through. And so, and work is, we're all trying to, do our best and trying to do epic things, which are not going to be easy. So yeah, always thinking about in a world where you can be anything, be kind, just because we're all going through things that, like none of us have an idea about.
Transitioning to your experience at Anthropic, I'm curious, what excited you about Anthropic over all the other options, and why'd you join?
Oh, so I was, as you could tell, I'm still a big VR fan. So I actually really loved working at Meta and on VR, on Horizon OS. And so I wasn't even looking for a new adventure. So there were I guess the only option would have been join Anthropic or stay working on VR. Yeah, because I was really happy working with amazing people, working on a product I'm really passionate about. So I feel very lucky about that. And so, yeah, internally, I was also using DevMate underneath. I think it was a Sonnet model to build some tools to help out at work. And so I saw firsthand how this is just transformative. And I think at first you might hear about it on the news, but until you experience it, it's not like a future thing. AI, it's already here. It's already changing how we work. So I was always very passionate about the space. But it was still hard for me to say farewell to Meta. And but it was just the more and more people I talked with at Anthropic, I was really drawn to how mission-oriented everyone was. That actually reminded me of one reason why I joined, Facebook and Facebook Marketplace back in 2015. And being that environment where everybody is so mission-aligned and really and all in just to make sure we, can build AI that benefits humanity with safety first. I was just really impressed with that mission-orientedness, and it really appealed to, I love working on teams where everyone's mission-driven and one team mentality. So that was, that was probably the biggest draw for why then I said farewell to Meta and joined Anthropic.
When you started at Facebook, it was very mission-driven. Did the culture change over time when you were at Facebook or Meta?
I think over time, the culture definitely, and by the way, I think culture does change because it's a living, breathing thing. I used to give these, Facebook AMA bootcamp talks, and I said, remember, culture is not just a poster on a wall. It's through your actions. So definitely, and it makes sense. Like as Facebook grew, I think culture changed. I would say in terms of the mission-drivenness, there were still folks that are very passionate about what folks do. Like, so for example, everybody on VR really wanted to make VR successful. So that theme was still there. And I think it's always important to, go back to, hey, what are you passionate about? Actually, I remembered I started feeling this way. It was around 2017. A lot of boot campers would, ask me when I would take the Facebook Seattle shuttle in those days, hey, I'm a boot camper. Can I chat with you, get you some advice? I'm looking for which team to join. And a lot of it was just, which team do you think I can have the most impact? And I remembered saying, hey, but what are you passionate about? You join to do something because there's something you're passionate about or some mission you believe in. And so that's why I think it's always important to think about, what is that passion or what is the mission one is passionate about?
If you could have both, it's a no-brainer, like a team where there's impact and there's passion. But if you had to make the trade-off, like, one versus the other, and you're advising someone who's joining a company, what would you say, like how to navigate that? So like a less impactful role, but you're really passionate, or, it's extremely impactful, but you're like, I don't really want to.
Actually, I would say have that honest conversation with yourself. And so with one-on-ones, I like to, anytime I'm supporting someone new, I mentioned I like to ask them, hey, what do you look for in a manager partnership? What's worked well? What hasn't worked well? Another tool I use is then I ask, hey, what's important to you, and what's motivating to you and why? And there's no right answers or wrong answers. But I use that to learn what is important to someone, because it's different for everyone. So for a person, it might be I really want an impact, or I really want to learn, or I really want to work with great people. Like just making sure you're sharing that with your manager so that you're not either guessing what's important to the other person when it may or may not be important.
So you've been onboarding at Anthropic for 2 months at this point. I'm curious, is there any interesting insights in your onboarding or things that really stand out to you?
Ooh, definitely. I talked so much about mission. So before I joined, everybody that I met in the interview loops were great. And you do wonder, wow, is everybody truly this mission driven, or is it, like a tagline? Starting from day one onboarding, you see, oh yeah, being mission driven to build AI that benefits all of humanity with safety first is this big responsibility that's really on top of mind for everyone. So that was really it definitely was, okay, yeah, this is core part to the culture and DNA and not just a slogan. So that definitely stood out. I would say joining Claude Code, the speed. I thought I remember marketplace days where I felt we moved really fast. Like Claude Code, it could be a time warp, or maybe it just feels even faster. So that speed of iteration and we're really fortunate on Claude Code because Anthropic, everybody, at Foods, Claude Code. So we have a really, really high amount of feedback. And so that loop of, I have an idea, let me build, let me launch internally. Okay, let me get feedback from end fooders. Okay, now let's launch to public and continue with the feedback. That rapid iteration loop has really impressed me. And it's definitely something that's top of mind for me as we grow our team to keep up that agility and speed.
Coming to the end of the interview, I want to ask you a few career reflections. Was there ever a time where you received feedback and it really changed your career? And if so, what was the feedback?
I would say actually one of the most pivotal feedback I ever received was feedback on receiving feedback. So we're engineers, we like to set breakpoints and debug and earlier on at Meta, and when someone would give feedback, I'm like, oh, I definitely want to get better. Let me ask more questions so I could debug the situation and replay the situation and figure out how I can improve. And someone gave me really good feedback of, hey, when someone cares enough to come to you for constructive feedback, it's already uncomfortable enough. Make sure that first session, you're just in read-only mode, just to learn and listen. You may have questions, but save it for another day because it's already uncomfortable for that person. You don't want anyone to ever feel like they have to justify the feedback. And so just pay attention, just give yourself the space, pay attention, listen. And that night, even if you have questions, hold it until the next day. Give yourself time to sit with the feedback and reflect. And that's been some of the best advice, because that really changed my approach of, how to give and receive feedback.
And then last question is, if you could go back to when you just entered the industry and give yourself some advice, what would you say?
I'm going to say, enjoy the ride. Michael 𝗹𝗶𝗺𝗀 used to say, these are the good old days. So I would say, yeah, enjoy the ride. And these are the good old days, because you look back and everything happens so fast. Sometimes you don't look back and really enjoy the moment as you're living it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Fiona. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming by. It's awesome catching up again.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. I don't sell anything or do sponsorships, but if you want to help out with the podcast, you can support by engaging with the content on YouTube or on Spotify. If you want to drop a review, that'll be super helpful. And if there's any guests that you want to bring on to, please let me know. I feel like sourcing very senior ICs, there's no well-studied list out there on Google that I can just search this up. So if there's someone in your org or at your company who you really look up to and you want to hear their career story, let me know and I'll reach out to them.